I had to disappoint one of them. I gathered my few possessions ready to leave with the informal Mary. Maya Valley was visibly furious. She took out a loaf of bread and began sawing it into chunks on the bench without releasing me from her glare. Mary casually walked in front of her and offered to slice the bread. Maya Valley put the bread away at once, but kept hold of the knife. Mary said her goodbyes and led me away. I was desperately relieved to escape Maya Valley's fury. I hope you don't mind, Mary whispered as we walked to her home, catching glimpses of the coal refinery chimneys between the other houses. Most people find Aunt Faye a little overwhelming. I'm grateful, Miss Valiant, I told her, feeling lighter already. I told you to call me Mary, she said, and then smiled. After all, we're practically family now. Mary showed me upstairs to a room that was clearly her own, saying she would take the floor in her father's room. I don't need a bed, I said, embarrassed. Usually I just sleep on the ground. You can sleep on the floor here if you wish, she replied. It's part of the room after all. Oh, and you can adjust the floor vent just here. I looked where she pointed and saw a mist rising from the floor. My kitchen engine's underneath, she said. I have a jury-rigged power loom attached to the stove. Then I drilled through the floor because, why not? For the first time, I noticed the grease under her fingernails. I'm sorry, I said, about your cousin. She smiled that smile again, holding herself together as a gift to me. What about you? Do you have a family? A home? My mother is still living, as far as I know. I left her in Scarsdale. She was once quite famous for her soul-eating magic, but didn't want me to be forced into the same career. Mary's eyes widened in horror. And then you came here and were made to eat Adam's soul. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not like that, I said. Your cousin's soul isn't the first soul I've eaten. Go on, she said. I love a story, especially one with magic. Evelyn and I were hunting rabbits near our village. To my surprise, the words spilled easily from my mouth. I hadn't spoken Evelyn's name aloud in years, but I still remembered how offended I felt that she was a better shot than I was. Just thinking of her brought back the sharp smell of pine needles and rabbit scat, and my pride that our mother let us slip through the trees on our own, like wild animals already mature and fending for themselves. We were arguing as usual. I wanted to go home because it was getting dark, but she was too proud to return empty-handed. She slapped me. I knocked her down. She wailed like a banshee, and I told her to shut her saucebox. Mary listened intently, her eyes steady on mine, and her lips slightly parted. We were distracted, I said, biting down on the urge to say it was all my fault. There was a bear. A bear? Mary's eyes flicked away just for an instant to the forest outside, the same forest that had claimed her cousin's life. It wasn't a bear, I admitted. It was the bear. My family has been haunted by that beast for generations, an albino that doesn't behave like a natural bear and has lived far longer than any normal creature should. There was a moment of silence. She seemed to believe me, so I went on. Evelyn suddenly stopped crying, and I knew what was there without looking around. I cleared my throat. She, the bear, killed my sister so quickly, so easily. Evie was so very still, yelling at me 1 minute and then dead. She was just a child. You were just a child yourself, Mary whispered. We've been stalked by that bear so long, my mother calls it Knox, the night. Funny, she didn't try to eat Evelyn. She sniffed her and then looked up at me, like it was disappointed by my reaction. My heart was pounding. I remembered those two intelligent red eyes. And then it went away. I don't know why. Mary's eyes were fixed on mine. I shrugged. I knew the words that Soul Eaters say, so I said them. Someone had to, and I was just mixed up, so I ate Evelyn's soul. I sighed. A few moments later, I realized what I'd done. As soon as the official Great One tried to eat her soul himself, he'd know I was a soul eater. I ran home and told Mother everything. She said I had to leave right away, or the Great One would take me to the soul school. Mary finally looked away. I've been a trader, hunter, beggar, and a bard, I said, but I've never eaten another soul until now. I'm glad, she said with sudden spirit. I'm glad Adam has company wherever he is, even if the souls are just sleeping until they go to the other land like the king says. I'm still glad. I hadn't thought about soul eating that way. I imagined Evelyn with another soul dwelling alongside her, and it comforted me. Thank you, said Mary, for telling me about her. She touched my arm lightly. I'm not sure I'll attend the funeral tomorrow. What will you do? Good, she said. I wouldn't have had the courage to skip the funeral on my own. I spent a quiet day inside, thrilling at the treat of a roof over my head. The following day I woke with the sun as always. The vent in the floor was already steaming. I dressed and went downstairs, knowing Mary was already at work at the kitchen engine. She was stoking the stove. I stopped in the doorway so I wouldn't disturb her. Her face was lit up by the fire's glow, and the tears on her cheeks shone like jewels. She put a teapot on to boil, then checked the connections of her machine, tightening here, oiling there, before attaching the chains that set the power loom to continue weaving a broad sheet of pale blue cloth. Sighing in satisfaction, She sat on a wooden stool and tended to the loom as it brought the threads together into a whole. Can you make the tea? She asked without turning around. Father and I both take honey, but no milk.